welcome back to the Leered channel. What if your backyard could become the place where your mind finally slows down? Imagine stepping outside and hearing nothing but the gentle movement of leaves, the crunch of gravel beneath your feet, and the quiet presence of carefully placed stones. Japanese stone gardens transform ordinary outdoor spaces into peaceful landscapes. Today, we'll discover how to bring that timeless serenity into a modern home garden. Before placing a single stone, there is something more important to understand. Japanese stone gardens are designed around a philosophy, not simply decoration. Their beauty comes from simplicity, balance, asymmetry, and intentional empty space. Every element has a purpose, and every empty area has meaning. Once you understand this principle, you'll stop thinking about filling your garden and start thinking about creating harmony. Here's a surprising secret. The most important part of your garden might be the space where nothing is growing. In Japanese-inspired design, empty space creates breathing room for the eye and the mind. Gravel, open ground, and uncluttered areas can make a small garden feel larger and calmer. Instead of asking, "What can I add?" ask yourself, "What can I leave beautifully untouched?" Now look at your outdoor space differently. Where does sunlight fall in the morning? Which corner stays naturally quiet? Where can you see the garden from inside your home? The best location is not necessarily the biggest one. A narrow side yard, courtyard, balcony garden, or small backyard can all become serene retreats when the design works with the existing surroundings instead of fighting them. And now we reach the heart of the garden, stones. But don't think of them as ordinary landscaping materials. In Japanese garden traditions, stones can suggest mountains, islands, waterfalls, or enduring strength. Their shape, size, orientation, and relationship to one another matter. Instead of scattering rocks randomly, imagine you are composing a landscape painting, with every stone deliberately positioned to tell part of the story. Want your garden to look sophisticated rather than artificial? Choose stones that appear as though nature placed them there. Look for variations in texture, weathering, shape, and size. Avoid using too many identical pieces because repetition can make a landscape feel manufactured. A few distinctive stones are often more powerful than dozens of decorative rocks. The goal is not perfection, it is natural character. Here's where a handful of stones can create an entire imaginary landscape. A larger upright stone can suggest a mountain, while lower stones can represent surrounding land or distant islands. The viewer doesn't need to consciously understand the symbolism. Instead, the arrangement creates a subtle emotional response. Suddenly, a small backyard can feel like a miniature world stretching far beyond its physical boundaries. If you think everything in a beautiful garden needs to be perfectly centered, this next idea may surprise you. Japanese-inspired landscapes often embrace asymmetry. Uneven groupings feel more natural and visually interesting than identical arrangements. Try grouping stones in different numbers and sizes, while maintaining an overall sense of balance. The result should feel effortless, as though the garden evolved naturally over many years. Now imagine replacing a traditional lawn with a carefully textured field of gravel. Suddenly, maintenance can become simpler while the visual character becomes stronger. Gravel creates a clean foundation that allows stones, plants, shadows, and architectural elements to stand out. Choose a suitable aggregate for your climate and intended use, then consider how its texture and color interact with your home's walls, pathways, and surrounding landscape. becomes one of the most recognizable features of a Japanese stone garden, the raked gravel. Those flowing lines are more than decoration. They can suggest rippling water, movement, or waves surrounding islands. Curved lines create softness, while straight patterns can feel more structured and modern. The beauty is that you can change the patterns, giving your garden a subtle sense of movement without adding a single living plant. But what if you love Japanese garden principles without wanting your backyard to look historical? That's where modern design becomes exciting. Combine traditional ideas with contemporary architecture, concrete, steel, timber, minimalist furniture, or architectural lighting. Keep the palette restrained and the composition intentional. The result can feel unmistakably modern while still carrying the quiet spirit of Japanese-inspired landscape design. Here's another unexpected lesson: you don't need a jungle to create a lush-looking garden. Japanese-inspired spaces often use plants selectively, allowing each specimen to become visually meaningful. Consider trees, moss, grasses, ferns, or carefully chosen shrubs suited to your local climate. Instead of planting dozens of varieties, repeat a small selection. Consistency creates calm, while strategic placement creates visual rhythm. There is something magical about moss. Its soft texture can make stone appear older, deeper, and more connected to nature. In suitable climates, moss can soften hard surfaces and introduce a sense of quiet age. But don't force it where conditions are unsuitable. Instead, create the environmental conditions your chosen plants actually need. A garden becomes more beautiful when you cooperate with nature rather than constantly trying to control it. Think you need a pond or waterfall to capture the feeling of water? Not necessarily. In a dry stone garden, raked gravel can symbolically represent flowing water. You can strengthen that illusion by shaping the lines around carefully positioned stones. This creates a fascinating contrast. Something completely dry can still communicate movement, fluidity, and tranquility. It is a perfect example of how Japanese garden design uses imagination. Now imagine walking through the garden rather than simply looking at it. A pathway changes everything. Instead of revealing the entire landscape immediately, it creates a journey. Use stepping stones, gravel paths, or simple slabs to guide movement. The path can curve slightly, slow the visitor down, and create changing viewpoints. The garden becomes more than a picture, it becomes an experience that unfolds one step at a time. Want to make the garden feel like a true escape from everyday life? Start at the entrance. A gate, framed opening, change in paving, or simple transition between materials can create a psychological boundary between home and garden. The moment you cross it, the atmosphere should feel different. Even in a compact backyard, this small transition can make the garden feel like a separate world. A peaceful garden needs somewhere to experience it. Consider a simple wooden bench, low stone seat, or minimalist outdoor chair positioned toward the most interesting view. Avoid placing furniture everywhere. One carefully selected resting point can become a destination. And here's the hook. Sometimes the best feature of your garden isn't something you look at, it's the place where you sit, breathe, and finally stop rushing. But don't let your garden disappear when the sun goes down. Thoughtful lighting can completely transform the atmosphere after dark. Use subtle illumination to reveal textures, highlight important stones, define pathways, or softly illuminate plants. Avoid excessive brightness. The goal is not to turn the garden into a stadium. Instead, create pockets of light and shadow that make the landscape feel mysterious, intimate, and peaceful. Close your eyes for a moment. What does your garden sound like? Wind moving through grasses, leaves rustling, gravel beneath footsteps, or even the gentle sound of water can add another dimension to the experience. A serene garden should engage more than your eyes. Think about sound when positioning plants, pathways, screens, and water features. A visually beautiful garden becomes unforgettable when it also sounds beautiful. Modern homes often face one major challenge: privacy. Tall fences can solve the problem, but they can also make a garden feel enclosed. Instead, consider layered screening with plants, timber slats, bamboo-like structures where appropriate, or carefully positioned architectural elements. The trick is to block distracting views while preserving glimpses of sky and greenery. Privacy should feel like protection, not isolation. Think your backyard is too tiny for this style? Think again. A small courtyard can actually make Japanese-inspired design even more powerful. Limit the number of elements, choose one strong focal stone, use gravel to unify the ground plane, and introduce a small number of plants. When every element has breathing room, even a compact space can feel expansive. Sometimes limitation becomes the secret ingredient of elegance. Here's a technique that can make a garden appear deeper than it really is: create layers. Place larger or stronger elements closer to the foreground, medium elements through the middle, and softer planting or darker textures toward the back. This creates visual depth without requiring a huge property. You can even use changes in elevation, framing structures, and carefully positioned plants to make the garden seem to continue beyond its actual boundaries. There is one mistake that can quickly destroy the peaceful atmosphere: adding too much. Too many stones, too many colors, too many ornaments, too many plant varieties, and too many decorative objects create visual noise. Japanese-inspired design depends on restraint. Before adding something, ask whether it contributes to the composition. If it doesn't, remove it. The empty space you create may be more valuable than the decoration you were planning to buy. A beautiful garden should also make sense for your environment. Choose plants that thrive naturally in your climate, use appropriate drainage, and select materials that can withstand local weather conditions. Consider permeable surfaces where practical and reduce unnecessary irrigation. A sustainable garden is not about copying a landscape from another country perfectly. It is about borrowing the principles of harmony and adapting them intelligently to the place where you actually live. And now imagine something deeper than having a beautiful backyard. Imagine using it as part of your daily routine. Drink your morning coffee beside the stones. Sit quietly after work. Walk the pathway before beginning your day. Notice seasonal changes in leaves, shadows, textures, and weather. The garden becomes valuable not because it impresses visitors, but because it gives you a reason to pause and reconnect with the present moment. So, what makes a Japanese stone garden truly beautiful? It isn't the price of the stones, the size of the backyard, or the number of plants. It is intention. It is the relationship between stone and space, light and shadow, movement and stillness, nature and architecture. Start with one meaningful idea, remove what feels unnecessary, and allow your outdoor space to breathe. Because sometimes, the most luxurious garden is simply the one that gives your mind room to be quiet.